Welcome to the Steele Creek Explorer. I'm your host, Jeremy Stout, and today, let's have a conversation about conservation. Welcome back. It's often been said about conservation that we should think globally while we act locally, and that's never been more true than right now. Worldwide, species and biodiversity as a whole is being threatened on levels unprecedented, at least in human history. And while there are numerous challenges facing a lot of species worldwide, almost all of those fall into one of four major categories: overharvesting, habitat loss and degradation, the introduction of exotic or introduced species, and global climate change. And while we tend to think of these issues as things that are happening somewhere else or somewhere over there, they're all things that we can see and measure right here in our own area. So that's what let's do. Let's head out, and I'll bet we don't even have to leave Steele Creek Park, which is a natural and wonderful place, but we can find all four of those issues right here. Usually when we talk about overharvesting as one of the major global threats to biodiversity, we talk about our overfished marine fisheries. And while that does deserve all of the attention that it gets, we also have a number of species right here in our own area that are at risk of overexploitation. So the obvious first choice is one of our couple of species of ginseng that grow in this region. That's a species that is at risk of extinction due to overharvesting. While I don't have any of that to show you right now, there are other species that are popular in the herbal medicine markets that do run a risk of getting overharvested either on a local or a regional scale. One of those here is Solomon seal. Solomon seal is a lovely wildflower that blooms in the spring and early summer. And it's prized for its medicinal qualities, and sometimes will get over-harvested or eradicated in the wilds where it occurs. Also not for medicine so much, but for food, morel mushrooms. Their fruiting bodies, the parts that come above ground, are prized as a delicacy. And so sometimes unscrupulous morel hunters will wipe out the fruiting body of an entire stand of morel mushrooms. So it's not just ginseng. There are a number of our local species that if we don't manage them carefully, we might lose them, or at the very least see greatly reduced numbers. Well, if you ask any child and most adults, what are the main problems facing biodiversity and our planet today? Almost everybody will say is one of the first things, pollution. But you might remember on our list at the beginning of the episode, pollution was not one of the top reasons for biodiversity decline worldwide. What there is a larger category called habitat degradation. And that is just exactly what it sounds like. When otherwise suitable habitats or ecosystems get spoiled for some reason, in many cases due to pollution. And boy, sometimes you can just see it. Litter is one of those pollutants. If there's a silver lining here, it's that probably none of this litter was actually dropped in Steele Creek Park. But unfortunately, all litter will at some point end up in a nearby waterway, which always ends up at a larger waterway. And so what that means is if you throw something out your car window in much of Bristol, then that litter will eventually find its way into Steele Creek Park, and that's what's happened here. But while you can see the fast food cups and the water bottles, you can see a lot of this litter. Actually, some of the worst pollution that comes in from the waterways is stuff that is invisible to us. And that's in the form of runoff, whether that be vehicular runoff, oil and antifreeze from poorly maintained cars, or agricultural runoff, fertilizers and animal waste. Those are things that get into the water and cause pollution at a molecular or a bacterial level or a microbial level. And those are actually what will degrade this habitat farther and faster than just the litter that we can see with our naked eyes. Well, we could do entire episodes on introduced and exotic species. In fact, we have done entire episodes on species that are in our area that don't belong here. But this is one of those that's increasingly becoming a problem. This is a species of pear tree called the Callery pear, Callery pear. And this was brought here under a popular cultivar. You might know them as Bradford Pear, or Aristocrat Pear was one of the others. And it was supposed to be sterile when it first came to this region, but it didn't stay sterile for long. And so now these aren't edible pears. They produce these small little pears that are eaten by birds, and the seeds inside them get dispersed. And Callery pears like this one right here are becoming an increasing sight even in some of our native forests. They've left the areas where they've been planted, and they're now becoming an increasing nuisance in a lot of our area forests. So this is just one of many non-native species in our area. Well, we're going to use this species right here as a stand-in for a way that we can see global climate change. There's this misconception running around out there that, you have to go see sad polar bears on shrinking ice to be able to see global, large-scale climate change. But the truth is, these are effects that we can see and measure right here in our immediate area. And this is a great species that tells us about it. The tree swallow historically has been a summer bird only. It nests in our area, but it flies to warmer locations every winter. But what's interesting is we have data now going back decades from diligent members of the bird watching community that show that almost every single year, without exception, the tree swallow early arrival date, that record has been broken almost every single year for 30 years running. And their last of season, the late date that they stay into the fall, that record has been broken almost every single year for 30 years. This is a species that is gradually extending its seasonal range in our area. Is that a bad thing? No. But it is one of the measurable and demonstrable effects of climate change. It's affecting the seasonality of many of our species of birds and lots of other things as well. Well, we didn't have to go far to find examples of all four of the major global threats to biodiversity. Remember that those are regional threats as well as global threats. So that's the sad news. But also on our adventure, we found evidence that our world and our region where we live are still teeming with life. And you might have also noticed that of those four categories that we explored today, all four of those are either directly caused by or greatly exacerbated by the activities of our species, human beings. So that's the bad side. The other side of that coin, though, is that we are a species that are able to affect change on a scale no other species before us on the planet has been able to do. So now we understand that most of our activities on the planet have not been good for the planet up until now. We're now in the unique position of being able to decide how we want to plot our future, what course we want to take. So whether it's to come to enjoy Steele Creek Park to make the world a better place, or just because you're looking for a place to stretch your legs and get outdoors, be sure to come out to Steele Creek and the other Bristol parks, because here's where you can be the explorer.